Hello, everyone. My name is Severin Roberts. We're at our Stevens virtual reunion, kicking it off with our panel from our 50th class, who will be represented by Diane Sher. Take it away.
Thanks, Severin, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Class of 1971 sponsored panel. This is a new addition to the Stevens reunion lineup, a time when the 50th milestone class is sharing topics of interest with other alums, faculty, and students. As Severin said, I'm Diane Campbell Sher, president of the class of 71. The webinar format for this Zoom will provide audio and video for the presenters, while attendees will remain off camera and muted. But don't worry, you'll have a chance to weigh in. There will be approximately 30 minutes for your questions later, so please enter them in the Q&A section at any time by clicking on the button at the bottom of your screen. Chat will be open. However, we will not be monitoring that for questions. This session is being recorded for future viewing on the Stevens YouTube channel. Bios and resource materials will be posted in the Alumnae section of the college website for future reference. So let's get started with our panel on the path from Stevens to the boardroom. Although recent U.S. legislative efforts and other initiatives have helped bring women's representation in corporate boardrooms to an all-time high, it remains under 20%. This despite the fact that studies show gender and other types of diversity lead to better processes and outcomes. In an often less than inviting environment, how do women prepare and position themselves for selection to serve on public and not-for-profit boards? Joining me for the discussion, as well as a review of the current Stevens Center for Career and Professional Development, otherwise known as CCPD curriculum, and a lively Q&A, are the following. First, our moderator. Anita Parran, Stevens class of 73, is a principal at KK Communications and a board trustee for Stevens. A native of St. Louis, Missouri, she makes her home in Kansas City, Missouri, and is the principal, as I mentioned, of KK Charles Communications. That firm is an international award-winning firm that she founded in 1998, specializing in marketing, public and media relations, and project management. The company provides communications consultation services for a select clientele of small to medium-sized nonprofit and for-profit entities. Parran earned a BA in journalism from Stevens College and an MA in business management from Webster University in Webster Groves, Missouri. She earned the Certified Communications Professional CCP designation from University of Washington School of Communications. Anita is a servant leader and currently serves as follows. As I mentioned, the Stevens College Board of Trustees, its chair and Student Affairs Committee member. Association for Women in Communications, chair, National Board of Directors. AWC Advancement Fund, immediate past president, Board of Directors member. Missouri Board of Pharmacy, public member. Urban League of Greater Kansas City, vice president and board. Public Relations Society of America, vice chair, diversity and inclusion, and Inez Kaiser Scholarship Advisory Board. Anita has received the Velma E. Woodson Outstanding Leadership Award from the NAACP Kansas City, Missouri branch for being a committed volunteer for government, civic, and community entities. She was honored to join the Kansas City Globe Society of Influentials. Anita was selected twice as one of the city's most influential women by the KC Business Magazine. She received the National Headliner Award from the Association for Women in Communications and honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Kansas City Association of Black Journalists. For our panelists, we have first, Maxine Clark, founder and former CEO of Build-A-Bear Workshops. She is now the developer of Delmar Divine in St. Louis, Missouri. Clark is one of the true innovators in the retail industry. In 1997, she founded Build-A-Bear Workshop, which today has 400 stores worldwide with sales of nearly 200 million stuffed animals. In June 2013, Clark stepped down from her chief executive bear role to apply her entrepreneurial skills to her passion for improving K through 12 public education and to assist in and mentor women and minority entrepreneurs. Launched in 2015, her first project, Blueprint4.com, is a free and easy to use mobile app designed to help all families navigate the best summer activities, pre-college programs, and career options for their family. Her latest venture is the Delmar Divine, the transformation of a neighborhood eyesore into a multi-use real estate development scheduled to open in 2021. Clark is also a managing partner of Prosper Women's Capital, a St. Louis-based fund created to invest in women-owned businesses, and she's a member of the board of advisors of Lewis and Clark Ventures, a St. Louis-based private equity firm. She is also a trusted advisor and mentor to several women and minority-owned businesses. Her personal awards are many and include that she was a 2004 national finalist in retail for Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. She was awarded the 2017 Missouri Public Affairs Hall of Fame membership and the 2019 Missourian Award for her outstanding public service to Missouri. Among the Build-A-Bear Awards is being named the Fortune magazine's Best Companies to Work For list in 2018 for the 10th year in a row. In addition to her seat on Build-A-Bear Workshop Board, she's on the board of directors of Foot Locker Inc. and privately held Big Dot of Happiness. She's also on the national board of PBS, where she is newly elected the vice chair of the board, and the St. Louis Regional Board of Teach for America. Her recent past memberships were the National Board of Trustees for Teach for America, Emeritus Member, Board of Trustees, WashU in St. Louis, Board of Directors and Executive Committee, Barnes Jewish Hospital and Goldfarb School of Nursing, Board of Directors, Beyond Housing, and the Local 9 Network of Public Media Board of Directors. Clark is a graduate of the University of Georgia and holds an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from St. Louis University, an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters and Education from the University of Missouri St. Louis, and an honorary associate's degree from St. Louis Community College. In 2006, she published her first book, The Bear, B-E-A-R, Necessities of Business, Building a Company with Heart. Next up, Ann Murphy, Stevens class of 78, is Vice President of Development for Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast, and also serves as a trustee on the board of Stevens. She's a resident of Houston, Texas, and received the 2016 Stevens Alumnae Award for Achievement. Professionally, Murphy has 40 years experience as a development professional, capital campaign manager, and leadership training consultant. Her experience includes principal at Dinas Ferris from 2003 to 2017 after working there as a senior consultant from 92 to 98. She's been the executive director of University Advancement for University of Houston Downtown, 98 to 2003, and director of development for March of Dimes, 88 to 92. She began her nonprofit and board leadership at Stevens College, serving on the Alumni Association board and as class president. Murphy has served on numerous nonprofit boards and currently serves, as I said, at Stevens College, but also at Woodway HOA and Charter 100 Houston boards. She spent over 30 years teaching nonprofit leadership and board governance, along with fundraising courses at Rice University, and currently serves on the advisory board of Center for Philanthropy and Nonprofit Leadership. Lastly, Dr. Leslie Willey, Stevens class of 83, is Vice President of Academic Affairs and Interim Dean for the School of Arts and Humanities at Stevens. She became Vice President for Academic Affairs in June of 2016 after having taught at Stevens for 19 years. She's also served as Dean of the Stevens College of Interdisciplinary Studies, Director of the Children's School at Stevens, Director of the Undergraduate Education Department, Director of the Master of Education program. Prior to Stevens, Dr. Willie taught in both public and private early childhood and elementary classrooms. She has served as an educational consultant to schools, providing professional development to teachers throughout the United States. She's also worked as a consultant and provided professional development through the Ministry of Education in New Zealand. Dr. Willie earned a PhD and a Master's of Education from the University of Missouri Columbia and a BA from Stevens College. And with that, Anita, take it away.
I will take it away. And good afternoon, fellow Susies and others who may be in the audience. Thank you, Diane, for the invitation to moderate this auspicious panel of exceptional women. Let's first discuss the difference between a corporate board versus a not-for-profit board. According to the Deloitte Global Center for Corporate Governance Research, shows that women only make up 20%, and I think you mentioned this earlier, Diane, of public directors in the United States, and only 22% of public directors globally. And according to the most recent information I discovered, only 43% of women comprise the not-for-profit or nonprofit board of directors. Maxine, would you like to kick off this discussion?
I'd be glad to. Thank you for asking me. Well, there's really less and less difference all the time because nonprofit boards have taken on a much stricter governance structure, which is a good thing. And they're functioning more like for-profit companies. But the for-profit companies have to apply a lot of laws, like rules and Sarbanes-Oxley and SEC, and file quarterly reports, and depending on what industry they're in, they may have to file more monthly reports. But for the most part, they're required to file quite a few government reports that are frequent. They have to produce the results to the public on a quarterly basis as well, meaning conference calls and all kinds of things. So it's a much more, they are a public company, they're owned by public shareholders, so they have to answer to those shareholders. A nonprofit board usually has to answer to their board of directors, and if it's a, what the entity is, if it's a school or it's a community-based organization or a hospital, they have to answer to the officers as well. But they're getting to be less and less different, other than on a for-profit board, you get paid. And on a nonprofit board, I think 99% of the time you don't get paid. So it's really a volunteer position, and it takes quite a bit of time. So it's you got to do it because you love it.
You're absolutely correct about that. I could attest to that because I also read that if you're on a corporate board, you could probably earn $25,000 in a stipend, if you will, and then you get paid to attend board meetings and other teleconferences. So there is a profit margin there. Anne, let me go to you, because you have a lot of experience with the nonprofit or not-for-profit world. What's your take on things?
I think along with corporate and nonprofit, I do think people are looking very seriously about diversification of their board. That I would say when I got into this back in the 70s, most nonprofit boards were a group of white men, and that is just not the case anymore. In fact, I was surprised by your 43% number, because I would have thought it would have been higher. I think nonprofits have started looking at the fact that their boards need to reflect the community in which they operate or the community in which they serve. And so I think that's important. And you're absolutely right. You better be passionate about serving on a not-for-profit board, because it is a lot of time. And you also, I would say, absolutely have to be willing to make a gift. No one should serve on a not-for-profit board that they don't make a meaningful gift along with their time and talent. They need to do their treasure. And so I think that's very important. So if you're going to go on it, don't think you're just giving of your time. You need to give of your treasure too.
You're absolutely correct on that. And I have a checkbook that'll prove it. Leslie, let's go to you, because our students might be entertaining the thought of joining a board at some point in time. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, briefly, the Stevens Center for Career and Professional Development and how it's perhaps helping those young women prepare for board positions.
Sure, I'm happy to do that, Anita, and welcome to all of you. Yeah, our CCPD, we have a comprehensive program that is a graduation requirement that our students go through. It lasts all 4 or 3 years while they are here. It is a comprehensive approach to career planning and professional development. There is a set curriculum, but we also have a lot of extra opportunities for them to participate in certain workshops. It really focuses on moving students at the first year, exploring a variety of careers, looking at the resources that are around them, learning how to brand themselves, learning what to do and what not to do on social media, and thinking about, especially those beginning years, what do I want to do in the future? What are some of my goals? Is serving on a board one of those goals? If so, we will help you, support you in finding that venture. Is it something that you want to own your own business? We'll help you find those supports. As they go through, obviously there's resume building, there's interviewing skills, but we also look at things like networking. We also work with them on planning for their finances and salary negotiation, understanding what are our benefits when you're taking a job and what is the value of those. And we have obviously a lot of interviews, both mock interviews and setting up career fairs for them. We have some really high technology interview rooms, which we put to good use, and our alums often volunteer to do mock interviews. And another thing that we do is promote internships, because we know the value of an internship in securing a job later on.
That is absolutely fabulous. And I've been to the center and I've talked with the students, and I know that you're doing a great job. And I'm glad it's a prerequisite for graduation.
Well,
Absolutely,
and Anita, I
Parran.
would add, current students need to volunteer to serve on committees and be leaders on campus, because then somebody, when you're looking to go on a board, knows you've volunteered. So I would say on top of that, be a leader on campus. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that recruitment tip, because the Student Affairs Committee, which I chair, we are holding workshops for young women at Stevens who are aspiring leaders. So that is I'm glad you said that. We're working on it from a Board of Trustees perspective.
Can I add one thing, Anita?
Yes, go right ahead, Maxine.
The one thing that I tell all college students is the first organization you should join is the alumni organization of your university. And on LinkedIn, people always put their university where they graduated from. And if you're looking for a job and you're looking to search for Stevens College, it'll be so easy to find people. And you'd be surprised how many people will be, when they see that you say in your note to them that you're from Stevens College, they'll answer your email right away. So it's a built-in networking tool, even if you don't live anywhere near some of those alumni.
You're right about that. I've had that experience, Maxine, so thank you for sharing that. There is a pathway to board membership. And in my research over the last couple of days, I discovered that there are 7 very specific points. But I'd like to hear from you. What has been your experience in seeking a board position?
In my case,
Were you asked? Did they seek you out? Did you go after it? Did you know what you wanted to do?
I always wanted to be on a board because when I worked in the May department stores for the chairman of the company, I got to sit down on board meetings. And I thought a lot of important decisions were made there. So I thought, well, that'll be cool to be on a board someday. But they really do want people with experience. And while they're now going to the next layer, not just CEO or COO, they're going to the chief merchandising officer, the chief marketing officer, the chief sustainable officer, the CFO. They're looking to because of diversity, they're looking to get to younger and also broader experience of people, not just CEOs who make a lot of big decisions, but don't necessarily live where all the people live, so to speak, especially their customers. So they're looking to be much more customer centric, but they're not yet ready to take a customer who doesn't have the business experience. They might have an advisory board that would, ask for some customers and some other people to be in there, but they are looking for experience. And then I found once I got to be a CEO, I had a lot of inquiries of me, especially as a woman at that time in the early 90s, to be, they were looking for women, and they were looking for women had to have the top credentials. So they were looking for CEO or CFO. That's how I got called. And I got called a lot of times, and it was really helpful. And when I couldn't take one or the other, because you're only allowed to have so many if you are also a public company CEO, I would refer other women. So it was really a great way to meet a lot of people and to be able to refer my friends.
Hey, Ann, let me ask you from the nonprofit perspective.
I'm sure, and I think it's similar in some ways, and I would say perhaps another stepping stone to a for-profit board is to serve on a nonprofit board and those connections. But I think if you want to serve on a nonprofit board, there's a couple ways to get into that door. First, make sure, as we've all said, you need to be passionate about that organization. So don't just look at it as a networking. I don't think you'd make a good board member, but I think you can find an organization that you're passionate about, go to their website, research them. Find out if there is anyone currently on their board, because that's always, most people that's on their website. See if you've got some connect in with that. If you can't find that, connect, if they list what companies they work for, maybe there's a woman on that board that works for a law firm and you have a friend that also works at that law firm and you could network in that way. If you don't have that ability, volunteer. Pick up the phone and call the organization and say, I'd like to volunteer. Not that I want to volunteer for the board, but you just want to volunteer. Maybe it's serving on a fundraising committee. Maybe it's doing a day of service, and it gets you known within that organization. Another great way is to become a donor. Many times you look at your donor list when you want to put board members on. So I think it's getting yourself known within that organization. And then I think you have to also be realistic of saying, what are the real skill sets I can add to this board? You may want to be on a board, but is that board in a position, they need somebody with HR credentials, they need someone with programming, somebody with fundraising, whatever all those things are. And being able to say, here's the value I can offer, that you go in when you're talking to them, just like you're doing a job interview, you need to sell the skill that you're going to bring to help that organization.
You're absolutely correct. And, I've been approached to join boards before, and what you just said resonated with me because I'm interviewing them as well. Yeah. I need to know exactly what the expectations are, even if I'm passionate about it, and how the whole organization operates.
One thing, Anita, that also a lot of big boards, like I'm not sure about Planned Parenthood, but I know that the zoo here in St. Louis and Missouri Botanical Garden, they all have young professional boards as well. And they feed from that group. They look to see how they attend meetings and, are they participating? They come to our events, and it's a really good pathway. Much easier to get on that board, but then you have to perform. You have to show up.
Because we actually have our Planned Parenthood Young Leaders, the chair of our Young Leaders group, serve on our development committee now. So we've decided to give it even a more direct path. So you're absolutely right. Guilds, young leader groups. I will tell you, if you're a great fundraiser and serve on a fundraising committee, they give you a lot of look too for. And you can go on, so you go as a volunteer, then you might go on a board committee, and then you could go on the board. So sometimes it can be a 3-step process.
Right. And Leslie, in listening to this conversation, are the students exposed to these kinds of topics and issues when they go through the program?
Yeah, Anita, I think that they are. And one thing to start out, I would add that even our Stevens Board of Trustees, we have young alums members there. And I think that that's a really great way of us getting them involved and learning the benefits of being on a board. And I think that we do talk about that. We have several workshops that are scheduled throughout the year. We would love to invite any of you on our panel to come and do a workshop with our students on how to do that. But I think, as Ann mentioned, we do a lot of talking about leadership and what does that mean and what are the different roles of leadership that you take. And that's not only in your own career or business, it's also serving the community on boards and in other capacities. And as Ann mentioned, our student organizations are very, very active, or I guess, and Anita mentioned that, very active, and our Student Government Association is very active. And of course, being a women's college, the women learn how to be strong leaders. So I do think that that is part of the comprehensive program that we plan, not only through CCPD, but through our student development and as well as through academics and our Office of Engagement.
And Anita, I just have to say, when I was a student, I was offered the opportunity to serve on the Alumnae Fund Board as a senior with Libby Reed, who I know is on this call, and I give her a lot of credit for the success I've had to today. And so that serving on that board absolutely set me apart from many people, not only when I was interviewing for jobs, but again, when I wanted to do volunteer work on other boards, because I had been on a very active board. So I agree.
You know, one thing that the boards look for, you mentioned it, Anita, earlier about the development, you know, raising money. It's a really, for nonprofits, it's a really, really, really big part of the job of any board member is to give or get, or give and get, let's just call it that. So a lot of times the person that's really good at that is a marketing person. So a young marketing major who comes out of college, who's not afraid to ask, who's really been working in selling advertising for the school newspaper or for working on fundraising for their sorority. There's tons of ways that you can gain those skills. You might not like it, but you already come with the skills built in, and you know social media also. And that's a whole nother way that you can volunteer in these organizations, because they're still not as adept at that as they'd like to be. And I think that you can be, as a young board member or a young committee person, make a huge contribution really early on as a marketing major, as a person who's worked in social media and communications. Communications is a great skill to have, no matter what.
Right about that. And, you know, we've been talking a lot about networking, and there's always been the old boys system. I happened to join an organization here in Kansas City that women started because the boys wouldn't let them play in their sandbox. And that organization is now 40 years old. Is there such a network somewhere for women who can't get into the old boys sandbox?
There are all over the country, in every city now. I think there's probably by different names, you know, they might call themselves something different. But I would say that there's some more highly recognized ones, like I'm a member of the committee of 200, which started, our goal was to have 200 women. Now we have almost 500 women across the country. It's a tremendous network. And there's others, they're not coming to my mind right now, but there's tons of them. I'm a member of the Fortune magazine, Most Powerful Women. There's a ton of them. And there's always networking opportunities. Many don't have meetings all the time because they know we're really busy. But in towns, in big cities especially, there's always some kind of a network of women to join. And again, you know, it's another thing it takes time. And I think that's one of the challenges that women have, and why we probably started at that later is because we were, you know, workers, moms, wives, sisters, all these other jobs that we have, and we didn't prioritize networking as much as we thought as we probably should have. So now, recently, in the last, I'd say 15 years, there's just been an abundance, and it's hard to say no, but it's also hard to say yes, because you can't be at all of those places. Zoom has made it pretty easy to get to more things than I ever went to before.
Now, when you think about United Ways, many United Ways have started women's groups within United Ways. Your Chamber of Commerce, there's many cities have women's Chamber of Commerce, or even just a general Chamber of Commerce. So again, organizations you can join and absolutely network. But I do believe there is a women's group. And interestingly enough, I had a real good friend, early retired 2 years ago, big head of a big accounting firm. He decided what he wanted to do for the next 10 years was serve on corporate boards. And guess what he's recently been told? Not going to happen. You're a white male, and that's not what anybody's looking for. He said, so again, I think with the Me Too and a lot of those things, the window has absolutely opened for women to serve on corporate and nonprofit boards.
I also think a good opportunity for you as consumers, that you should look at companies that you like to shop at and make sure that their boards are diverse. Women, persons of color, younger and older people. That's the kind of companies you should do business with. I sit on the Foot Locker board, and we have 4 women, 2 African American out of 10 people, 4 women. So that's a pretty good percentage. 2 African American men, and a new board member, I think, is coming on. And then we have other, and as we age off, we're replacing all of those people with the appropriate demographic.
Terrific. Wow. I'm glad that this is a growing situation. I was looking online for some organizations, and I found Women in the Boardroom, founded in 2002 by Sheila Ronning. And I'd never heard of that organization before, but apparently it is stepping up to the plate and finding positions for women on boards. Here's a good question for you guys. What has brought you the most satisfaction in serving on a board? You don't have to tell the name of the organization, but your experience in working on, being on a board.
Well, I love being on the Foot Locker board. That's been really fun because I love shoes and I love what they stand for, and I love the diversity of the company and all of those things. And I've learned a lot from all of their executives. But I really do love my nonprofit boards because they've really given me a lot more soul, if you know, to speak about. I am on the board of PBS nationally and also locally, and you know, that is just one of those kind of treasures in our country. And I know it's always threatened. Every new president, not every new president, but every new Republican president, but it always gets thrown out of the budget. And so we always have to, you know, rise to the occasion. And that's kind of a challenge that we get involved in. But I would say that that one has given me a lot of joy. I've learned a lot. I've gotten to meet some really famous people and dig into the stories a little bit more deeply than you might even see on PBS itself. So I totally have gotten a ton of fulfillment from that.
Anita, I would say that I'm currently serving on a board of our organization called Cradle to Career, which is looking at helping children succeed throughout life, starting with from birth, early childhood on. And one of the things that I'm finding very rewarding about that is one of the goals is to look at the various organizations in town and make sure that we're all working together rather than competing against each other. And so I find that I've served on different boards before where we were doing a small piece and then you'd have to go to another board or another organization to get more, and it was almost competing. So I like the idea of being able to look at what's available in the community and bringing that together.
And what kind of satisfaction are you getting from your boards?
I have to say that, and I've served on a lot of nonprofit boards, but one startup, very small organization, had only been around a year. I think the satisfaction that gave me is to really help them put the right foundation together. And they have now grown where they are a much more serving a regional place. It's actually Undies for Everyone. So it's a little organization. I think being able to help them lay the foundation and watch them now grow into a much larger organization with helping with some of that structure of putting that together. But some of my favorite is actually going into other boards and teaching board members how to be comfortable with asking for money. So a lot of times it's not necessarily serving on a board, but providing some volunteer activities for other boards.
Well, I'm going to turn the tables now. We've been talking about all these wonderful positive things, but you know, there's a downside to the volunteering on boards or working for boards as well. Do you know of anyone, including yourself, who has been unsuccessful in getting on a board of their choice?
Maxine, you're
Yeah,
muted.
sorry. There were boards that I interviewed for that I didn't get, but I found something better, you know, something better came along, because you can only do so many, at least in the public company arena. But in the private, in the nonprofit arena, I have, you know, I think most of us have to say no more often than we can say yes, because they're pretty demanding, especially of people of our experience. They want, you know, people that can go out and raise money and, you know, speak up all the time for them, and you can only do so many things. And I think what Leslie said is really true. So many you know, Missouri has a lot of nonprofits, by the way. There's 16,000 in St. Louis alone, and that's way too many. And they're all competing because you compete for donors. So we were, you know, one of the things we get to do sometimes is, as a advisor to boards, is how can we come together? Can we merge? Can we bring people together? And then we have to convince the donors not to give less money, at least not in the first 3 years, to really make sure that that transition is solid. And so that's more of a business strategy, you know, real business strategy versus just what people think go on in nonprofits. But it is, you know, you have to learn to be able to say no too, because you can, the idea that you're wanted is a really good feeling. And the idea that you're over wanted is not such a good feeling. When you have to not show up at meetings because you're too busy, or you're traveling all over the country for whatever it is, and you can't get to all those places, it does sap your energy and your brain power when you have to divide it up against too many people.
You're right about that. I was on a Zoom a meeting yesterday and got a call from an organization that wanted me to join their board as a program chair. And I'm thinking, no, I am stretched so thin right now, I can't do it. I'm still a part of the organization, but I could not take on that responsibility. So you are certainly correct in that respect.
You know, and I know the question was kind of, you haven't gotten on a board, but I'm going to flip it a little to say, you know, and I think from what you just said, I think before you go on a board, how you're being recruited is exactly how that organization's going to run, that board's going to run. That if it's last minute, they're calling you up, you really don't have that close a relationship with them, they want you to take a leadership role, that says that that organization or board may be in a little bit of a crisis. And so if you're willing to take that on, then take that on. But I think really doing your homework before you go on a board of how you're recruited. Do they have board terms? I would never join a board that doesn't have board terms. What are their policies? What are their written job descriptions for the board? Really doing your research, I think, before you go on a board. So when you get on it, it is a happy place that you're being. This little startup I went on, I realized they didn't have any of those things, but I was willing to take that on because I wanted to help. But again, if you're not in that position, really understand the role you're being asked, because just because you're being asked to go on a nonprofit board, that can be different, 50 different ways. And so not every board operates the same, not every organization. So really understand what you want from that board. And as Maxine said, being willing to say no if it's not a right fit.
So Anna, I'm gonna take Anita's role for a minute and ask you a question. So what happens if you get on a board and it's different, ends up being very different than your expectations? What do we tell our students? How do you gracefully, what do you do? And you don't have the time and you don't have the energy to take on that leadership role, and that's not what you were expecting. What's your advice to them?
I think you go off, I think you not immediately go off, but you can say, I'm going to finish out this fiscal year with you because this just isn't the right fit for me. I actually was on a board of an organization that I didn't feel like the executive director was, there are a lot of reasons. And I left before my term was over. I just felt like I couldn't go on that board. And so I think you have to absolutely do that. I also think on the flip side, which can be hard to fire a volunteer, but I think there are times, sometimes you have to ask a board member to step down. And if it's in your bylaws or what those requirements are, they miss 3 meetings, they don't make a gift, all those things, that you have to have the ability to ask people to go off boards too if they're not meeting there. Because normally boards are anywhere from 6 to probably 24 people should be a nonprofit board. You need each and every one of their talents to really, yeah.
We keep track on many of the boards of attendance. And if you don't come, you know, if at the end of that year, you've made 1 out of 4 meetings, that we'll probably have a conversation with you and say, you know, unless you can improve this, we won't renew your term. And if that, you can tell how they feel about that. They'll either show up to every other meeting because they really want to be there, or they don't, and you just end it early. But it's pretty, attendance is a good sign because you give them the meetings before they should know before they join when the meetings are, and look at their calendar to see if they can participate. Emergencies happen, but they don't happen 75% of the time. They happen 25% of the time.
Right, and typically that the terms of the board member is in the bylaws, so everybody knows what the expectations are. And if you can't meet the expectations, I mean, this is a conversation you have prior to joining the board. You get all of that information so that you will feel comfortable.
Yeah, we have our board members sign their board engagement. We clearly list everything we expect, and they sign it every year.
That's a good idea. You know, one thing that another way, can I just add one little thing? One way that's easy it's not easy to have multiple boards, but if you have a subject matter that you're interested in, like education or early childhood, there are multiple things. And one of the things that I found on being on multiple boards that are in that space is I don't have to relearn everything. I can actually help synergies and collaboration because I'm on a board for parents as teachers, which is early childhood, and I'm on the board of something that's more higher education. And I can bring the two together, and people said, "What? We never thought of that before." So I would say that you can manage a few more than maybe you normally could if they're in the same field and they're related, they're in the same town, and you know, you can do a little bit like that. And it has helped, I think, me be able to give a little bit more breadth to my work.
Good point. I've got 2 minutes for you all to share any last minute tips or comments about this particular topic. Go. Leslie, you want to go first?
Sure. I would just add that, I think it is something that we do need to really work with our students on. I think that we provide leadership roles, but that's not a direct experience of serving on a board. And so we would welcome any of our alums that would be interested in coming in and talking to them, talking to a class, putting forth a session for our CCPD. We would very much welcome that. And anybody that has a need for a junior member on a board too. We certainly, if you were to contact us, we could certainly put you in touch with some students. And I think we would have a lot of interest. And I think that would be a really great way that we can improve and increase the leadership skills of our students.
And I'm just going to speak to also the fact that if you are someone that's worked for a lot of years and you raised a family and working and you haven't had that time, that you don't have that time to be on a board. When you get to that stage in your career, or maybe your kids are off to college or whatever, or you're not dealing with parents and kids, it really is a fulfilling thing. So I encourage people, women need to realize they have a lot to offer boards. And so whether you're 55 or 65, think about being on a board, even as an alum in your community, because I think you do have a lot of life skills to offer. And I think a lot of times women can tend to, not Stevens women, but other women can tend to think, I don't have what it takes to be on a board. And you really do.
You really
Yeah.
do.
I think what the point that Anne might have made earlier that I really agree with is find your if you have a passion, and it doesn't have to be what your career is. I mean, if you're an accountant and you love numbers, but you're really interested in the humane animals, go to the Humane Society and talk to them. They do have a young professionals board. It's a large national organization. They recognize their board members. They really appreciate it. There's organizations like that where you can jump in to something that you really care about. And that's the easiest way to success because it doesn't seem like work. It's fun. And because they do a lot, they're a very professional organization and they do a lot of events and things that you can enjoy that become sort of part of your social life. And you go off to these events and you're there and you meet people. And those people see you there and they say, boy, she's really an interesting person. I wonder if she's interested in a public company board. And remember, these are the ones where they pay you, which is a nice thing to add to your resume. And I'd say that most boards are probably not hiring public company boards or looking for board members actually over 35. Most of the time, they want you to have that kind of work experience. I don't think they ever specify, but I've been on many public company boards and the youngest person's usually around 35. So you have a few years to prepare for that before you get to that level of experience in your work that'll attract attention for you to be on a professional board.
Well, at this point, I would like to thank Leslie, Maxine, and Anne for a most enjoyable discussion about Stevens and the path to boards. And now I need to turn it over to Diane. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, we're going to all continue. And Anita, I'd like you to join in as an answer to some of these questions and comments as well. Thank you for being the moderator so far. I'll open with just a couple of statements that we've got in the Q&A. One from Ellen Orner, who said the Columbia Women's Network is a local one for Stevens. They've given scholarships to our students, so that might be another reason you want to support them. Joyce French from class of 71 states along just reinforcing what you all mentioned about investigating companies you shop with. Joyce says, when I invest in companies, I look to see who makes up the board. When I get to vote as a stockholder, I look at who I am voting for as a stockholder, and I want to see women's representation. Okay, in the form of a couple of questions that might not even be in our consciousness, but might be kind of in the back of someone's mind and hindering their enthusiasm for getting on a board. Are there risks to being on a board, either financially or for your reputation or a risk of any kind? Are there things that you need to be mindful of?
I'll just answer real quickly. If you serve on a nonprofit board, most organizations should have board insurance, liability insurance organizations. And so that's a question you need to ask because you are the fiduciary responsibility and you can be sued. If an organization doesn't have that insurance because they're real small, I've always just taken it out myself. But I would say, don't think just because it's a nonprofit board, you can't be sued for malfeasance of that board.
Yeah, I
could-
think in a nonprofit board, your reputation could actually be, because it's usually local. And if something happened that was wrong with that organization, and we've all read the stories in the paper of different organizations that most people would have thought were perfectly fine. And the board is held, your name is in the paper, they list it. Or people say, aren't you on that board? They just got in trouble. How did that happen? So, there's things like that that are risks definitely to your personal reputation. But all public company boards have insurance for their board members.
Yeah, I was on a nonprofit board some years ago, and each board member got hit with an IRS tab of $250,000 each because the executive director had not been paying the appropriate amount of taxes. Fortunately, a lawyer was our treasurer, so he kind of took care of the whole thing, but it was really a nightmare for all of us.
Wow, I've never heard of anything like that. That's interesting.
I've seen that. So carrying an umbrella policy, $1 million umbrella policy will pay your insurance costs. I mean, your lawyer's fees.
Right. Okay, another question. Has serving on a board ever limited or even broadened your ability to voice your support and concerns on issues of politics, justice, or society in general? So have you felt like you were somewhat muzzled? Or, do you just avoid those situations? How does it affect you personally and your strong feelings in other areas, or should it?
Well, it probably should. I mean, when I was, running Build-A-Bear, I was very conscious of my, how outspoken I was about issues that were personal to me. But when I retired, I, could say what I wanted to and join whatever I wanted to. The company doesn't invest in political candidates or political issues, but now I'm able to do what I want to, and I'm very vocal about it. And on the boards, one of the big things in public company boards right now is ESG, environment and social good that they're doing in the community. It's being measured by shareholders, and it's being measured by their stockholders. So it's really important that companies, they set goals about sustainability. They set goals about race and equity in their organization. And then it's up to the shareholders to hold them accountable. And I am on that all the time. I am on that all the time because I know that there's a tremendous, we make big commitments and they sound good in the paper. They sound great. But if you don't do it, your employees, your associates of your company are going to be really disappointed. But now your shareholders are going to hold you accountable. And I think it's about time. It's way overdue.
I can say that I was on the development committee of an organization in Houston that when I went to work for Planned Parenthood, they told me I had to step down. They would not allow me to be on the development committee anymore of that organization. They were in my will. They are no longer in my will. And I had been a donor to that organization for 30 years. So I do think sometimes it can conflict. So I think you just have to again, I've always been in the nonprofit world, so I've always been very vocal about my progressive support and wouldn't be on a board that didn't let me do that.
Anita, any thoughts on the question?
Well, actually, I'm a vice president of the Urban League of Greater Kansas City, and we are definitely getting involved in social justice issues. The ED is the principal spokesperson, but everybody knows who we are. And actually, being involved in that particular topic at this point in life, in time, they've raised more money than ever. It's amazing. The money's coming out of the woodwork. $50,000 here, $10,000 there. So everybody's on the social justice bandwagon, I think, pretty much.
That's exciting. That's very exciting. Leslie, how can alums utilize the CCBD program? I know in talking with Noah Hartsfeld, your colleague, that there are untapped resources there for us as alums.
Absolutely. We will help you if you want to have a change of career. We'll help you rebuild your resume, your CV. We will help with interview skills. You are always welcome to attend any of our events. And especially now, since we're in our new world and everything's virtual, it has really opened the door for that. So many of our sessions are through Zoom, and I believe will continue to be through Zoom, and you would always be welcome to attend those. And the sessions are again, it's a variety of things. Not only is it interview skills and resume, but it's networking, it's other leadership skills, it's building a portfolio. We've been looking at this year, the center's been working with some students on portfolios and how we're going to increase those. Again, social media, somebody said earlier, a lot of younger people need to do the social media on boards because that's not, or in organizations because that's not a skill, but that's something that I think we can help with as well, and how you want to brand yourself, business cards, all of those things. So all of the services are available to alums.
I think that's something that we're not always aware of. And there's a lot of other programs that the college offers that are all available to alums. And we'd like to get that word out, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Great, great. Okay, back to board performance. After making some strides towards diversity, many of these boards now look different. Are they consciously considering issues through a more informed lens, do you think? And what's the impact today? Have there really been changes, or is it, are these new folks kind of still in the minority and not pushing through the process yet? Or what's been your experience?
Oh, definitely making a difference. Foot Locker's had women on the board since 1974, so that's a long time. But not the same women, but that's had women representation, and we have 4, as I said, and we all speak up. Where it's much more interactive and engaging than a lot of boards might be. I've been on other boards that were not quite as welcoming and but it's a consumer business. And so women are in charge of what's money that's spent in their families. We have a lot of strong opinions about that. And I've been in retail, and another board member had retail experience. But I would say that for our persons of color that have come to the board in the last 10 years, they've made a huge impact. And you're bringing into a for-profit board, you're bringing very experienced people. So they come with knowledge and real life experience. And at a couple of the boards they have panels during Women's History Month and during Black History Month. And we all participate with the employees as well as with the board itself. So I think that's really, it's made a huge difference in all of our listening skills to hear new things that really matter, and how it impacts how people hear it from all different sides, from where they come from, not just where I come from. So I think it's been a hugely generative and positive contribution, overdue, but there now and making a real difference. And again, I check this out. I look at companies, and if they don't have persons of color on their board and they don't have women, I don't shop there. I write them a letter. I tell them I'm not shopping there. If I own stock, I sell it. And it's not that hard anymore to find out about that. You can just go online and check it out. But I just made a commitment to myself that I wasn't going to do that. And as an investor now, I invest in Black-led private equity firms. I want my money to go to young persons of color and women, and I'm investing in those organizations that take my money and invest it for me. And I think it's really important to put your money where your mouth is.
I wish everyone was as great as Foot Locker, because I'm afraid that in the nonprofit there in the last few years has been this sense we have to look like the community. So let's go out and recruit one Black person and one Asian, and then continue with things the way it always are. And it just doesn't work that way. As you get a more diverse board, if you've had a board that's been all your top leadership in the community, there's certain times of the day you can have board meetings. As you try to have a more diverse board, sometimes do you need board meetings at a different time? You need to look at how you're doing onboarding. If you bring on one person that looks different than everybody else in the room, how are you really having that person feel comfortable in that room? What does that look like? So I think people are getting better about that, but I think Foot Locker's way ahead on that, I will tell you. I do see that people want to get there, but I think they're still working on the skill set to really, how do we truly have a cohesive, integrated board that looks like the communities we serve. And I can't say nonprofits are quite there yet.
Well, we're working on it. Diane mentioned earlier that I chair the National Board of Directors for the Association for Women in Communications. In its 110 history, I'm the first African American to chair the board. The board has been totally all white. And I have been successful in recruiting a more diverse audience, if you will, board members. And I recommended that we institute a formal D&I program, and this past weekend, it was approved by the board. So we're moving in a different direction, or hopefully a stronger and more diverse direction.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
About time. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's what I said.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Yes.
It's so much more interesting to be on a board with people that don't look like you, or aren't your age, or come from different states and different industries. I mean, then you really get more than you give when that happens.
Right, and diversity means so much more than color and
Right.
racial and all that other stuff. So we're going to be looking at all of those elements of diversity.
Okay, another question. Are boards involved in decisions of public policy, such as those Coca-Cola and Delta are dealing with in reaction to new voting laws in Georgia? Is it just management? Is it the board? What's that interaction, interplay? How have you seen that work? And I guess, Maxine,
Yeah,
that's
I'd
your
say
daily-
that we have a policy about not, giving to any of the company's money to political action groups or things like that. So that's Build-A-Bear as well. You can't possibly give enough money to make it a difference. Now, Coca-Cola is a lot bigger and different, but I would say that if on issues like this, when there are issues that we have to get involved in, like putting more diversity in the company, we do talk about these things. This past year, many companies in retail particularly put in a proposal called the Black Lives Matter asked for it. At least 15% of your products and your business would go to Black-owned businesses. That's not enough, in my opinion, but it was a minimum. And so companies are doing that, and boards we measure that. And so you get what you measure. And so boards are responsible to make sure that those ESG goals, those environmental and social goals that you have, are met. And if you don't hold them accountable, then you shouldn't be on that board. I mean, it's really important. You may not agree. I mean, I agree that with Ann, my views are very, very liberal, and I'm a progressive. And there's some people that don't agree with me, but they hear me out. And, I get to say what I'm at a stage in my life and a stage in my career that it's valued, and they know where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a place of heart, for sure, but it's something I really believe passionately about. And I'm not afraid to hold people accountable. They can fire me if they want to, but they're going to hear what I have to say. And I don't get fired. So far, I haven't been fired for that. But I wouldn't have done it in my own company to put my associates in jeopardy. Now, this year is interesting for companies, because when we were after COVID started and we went back to work, stores opened up, there were many customers that wouldn't come in the store if they had to wear a mask. They were just defiant. And we had to support our store people, because that was the rule. And we wanted our associates to be safe. We had many people, that were in Build-A-Bear and in Foot Locker and other stores. I've heard about this, that were spit on, yelled at, this kind of stuff, but you have to stand tall. You have to stand tall. We didn't want them to be physically harmed, but we had to stand behind them. And that was the policy. We wanted them to be safe, their health to be safe, their family's health. So the ups and downs of this past year have taught us all a lot about what's political and what's not. Now everything is political, but I would say that good health and good and supporting your associates that work in your company to live a healthy life and to follow those health guidelines was an important decision.
Okay. Rather than 20 or 30% as a target, should we really be aiming for 50% participation of women on board, since that's what we represent in the population? And I'm also going to give a link where people can check at least public companies and how many they do have on the boards. There's a central clearinghouse, but are we aiming too low? People say be patient and you've made progress, but really, shouldn't it be 50-50?
I'm going to quote Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It should be 100%. Why should it be 50?
I was thinking the same thing, Ann.
Have it be 100% for 200 years, and then they can have it back.
Good point, Ann.
Well, what do we do about that? How can we codify that or make it, formalize it in policy? Is there any chance?
Maxine said absolutely. I mean, I'm going to start shopping at Foot Locker now. Let me tell you, I think we need to absolutely be aware of who that leadership is, who the staff leadership, board leadership, and as women we speak with our feet and don't shop there. Don't support them. Don't buy stock in them. I think we are a powerful group that can make that happen.
That website, for those that are taking it down, it will be listed in the resources later, is www.5050wob.com/research. And that actually is a directory of 3,000 companies. And I looked through it, and it tells you how many women are on the board. It gives a rating and so forth. And it's a lot of data. So you can very quickly go to that resource and for
Can you
your
say it one
shopping.
more time? Can you say it one more time?
Absolutely. It's www.50550wob.com/research/.
Okay,
And
got it.
it's not every company in the world, but it's 3,000 of them. And so that's one centralized place you can go where a particular company's website may not be as, easy to find. You might have to dig for it. And this has got some summary information. And it looks like they do try and keep it up to date, at least annually. So you may have to do some additional research, but it is helpful. Okay, let me see. Okay, we're getting pretty close on wrapping these up. What do you hope for in future board governance that is different from today? What do you have, some out of the box ideas or goals that you have that you're not seeing discussed or haven't been met yet?
I think for me, it's getting to that. You don't even notice that there's, 50% women and 50% men. There's no more first that, that's the first Black woman or the first Black man or the first person under 40 or over, like that we don't, it just becomes sort of a natural part. And that's what I feel about the boards that I'm on. And when I started Build-A-Bear, we had a very diverse board, but you've got to really hold people accountable. And as a customer, you can do that. Your money does speak. And I think that's really important. So for me, that's what I look forward to. It is so much more fun. And I think companies, they rate those companies that have diverse boards and diverse management teams are doing better, way better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we didn't focus on that, but bottom line, the return on investment, the profit margin, all those statistics, if you look it up and just Google women on board results, it will show you all those points financially, as well as lower turnover in employees, better retention of customers and clients, all those financial markers that you can really see the difference. It's been documented now with McKinsey, with let's see, I had a couple of other
it's well documented.
Harvard Business Review. It's all out there. So if you're trying to build a case, you certainly can. Anne, did you have a comment on the future?
I would just hope that people will look at their board service of nonprofits with the same professionalism as if they were serving on a Fortune 500 company, because nonprofit boards need serious governance. And it's not that you're walking into the board meeting, opening the packet of materials that you were sent, you haven't read them, that you come prepared and you take it seriously when you're on a board.
Anita, any thoughts about a futuristic view that could be for the better?
For the better, well, the organizations that I'm associated with are looking towards pretty much what Maxine was saying, the social justice or injustice activities that are going on. And then we're also looking very much at succession planning, because selecting the appropriate people to serve on the boards is extremely important now more than ever.
Okay.
So those conversations are taking place.
I just wish every nonprofit board ran as well as the Stevens College Board of Trustees.
There you
We
go.
are good, aren't we?
Okay, a couple of comments. Noah Hartsfield, who I alluded to earlier, is manager of the CCPD program, and he wanted everyone to know he's speaking at 4 p.m. about alumni involvement, and would love to hear from anyone. And he'll have his contact information up during that session, so you can reach out to him anytime. Diane Lynch, our president, is listening in, and she said she would invest in any company wise enough to have one of you amazing Stevens women on its board. And also Maxine Clark, I'm sure, who's an unofficial Stevens woman because she's participated in some of our programs, although she's not a graduate. We can consider her one of our own. Joyce French had another comment. The other thing about talking up what we look for buying and looking at boards as a woman is be sure what we look up is being known to others. So spread the word. We've got great networking capabilities. So if someone's not living up to their promise, we can get the word out and make that known effectively.
Twitter
So-
works. Companies, when something goes online on Twitter, companies respond to it.
Okay. And any other platforms that they're really monitoring?
They monitor all of them, but I would say that Twitter, because it probably is short and sweet, somebody who's mad in line at a store can go online and easily tweet something about that. And I've been on an airline, issue, and within minutes I get an answer on Twitter. I can't get an answer from the person behind the counter, but you can get an answer from somebody in their customer service area, or not necessarily their board, but Twitter is a way to voice your displeasure and your appreciation. Appreciation is also worth it. And the airlines do right. I mean, those are the ones that I always say something good to one airline when I have to say something bad to another, but I would just say that they appreciate the good comments also, and those aren't not unnoticed. They're very much appreciated.
Okay, Anita, did you have anything else that you had to cut short and you more questions when we brought in the public questions?
No.
Well, I think we've done a great job and we've covered a lot of ground. President Lynch, again, responding to Ann's comment, said, couldn't have said it better myself. Our Board of Trustees is a role model for an effective and professional nonprofit board, as you would imagine. So we are grateful today to have several trustees represented in our two panels. Thank you to the college. Thank you to Severin for your support. Thank you for letting the class of 71 have this forum to share among alums and with faculty and students some of the things that are on our minds and some of our experience that we can maybe give some history and some experience back to the ones that are still there learning. And of course, we're all learning too. And we're looking forward to a great reunion weekend. I want to thank you again. And
Diane, let me say one thing. I want to say for every Stevens alum on this, the two greatest things you can do for your college is to talk to an 18-year-old about coming here and getting the great education like you got, and to write them a check so we can continue to have the incredible education that we have.
Spoken like a true fundraiser and recruiter. We know her skill set. Thank you so much, Ann. That's a great commercial and a great way to end on a positive note. We hope the rest of you have a wonderful experience this weekend at Reunion 2021.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Have fun.
Good to see everyone.
Bye-bye.